I think what's really cool about this particular conversation is we do have that two sides of the same coin where you need research and you need activism, and they both can play a role in, increasing the impact of the other. How do you see, research and activism benefiting one another so that results of research actually, get to communities to promote climate justice? So, like for you, that would look like what role can scientific evidence play in improving communication and community engagement?
Yeah, and I think that is something I think when narratives meet the numbers, that is where public opinion really like shifts, and we've seen that through kind of aligned movements. Is like that sweet spot around like, okay, folks see it in the stats, and then they see it with the stories, and they connect those dots gracefully. And that's really where we've seen the power in just like mobilizing people. It's just like the stories are not enough on their own most times, and then the stats and the data is often not enough because folks, if we just put some data on a social media graph, they're just like, okay, I have no context, I don't see real people. So I think we've seen it just around like how being able to like mobilize young people and get folks engaged is like, okay, meet these in the middle, connect them thoughtfully. I think as somebody just like tries to think around like how do we like not always speak to the same folks. I think I've been thinking about that more and more. It's just like there's a subset of people who are just like, okay, anything that we kind of create, we know it'll reach them. But those folks, they're already bought in. They already understand the urgency of this issue. So there's the other side around like these folks, climate change has never, or the climate crisis has never talked to them. So trying to ensure that we're thinking through how do we use both to start those conversations, I think is one piece. And then it's often like, okay, how can we ensure that they see themselves in the content that they're seeing, and also seeing the narrators and spokespeople also look like them, I think has really been a core thing as we think through what the climate messaging is really trying to figure out how do you make it empowering so folks are not just like in a constant state of anxiety, because I think that's we're also in a lot of that is just around, okay, like I know we're in a crisis is like often the response we get, like what do I do about it, like these numbers aren't helpful to me because I don't know how to take action. And I think that's really this, we're really trying to have people, and how I really think around is like kind of an elevator or arc of engagement. It's just like, okay, we learn, we kind of take action, and then we kind of get organized. Um, so I think that's really where the movement is really going, is like the messaging is one piece, the narrative is one piece, and then ensuring that we have the data on our side to back it up. Otherwise, I do think we just have like one-sided thing. So we're really relying on the power of stats to supplement the stories we're telling. And like there's an endless amount of stories we can kind of amplify, but I do think we're trying to make sure folks kind of get all sides in order to really take the next step, which is like have concrete ways and solutions to get involved.
Definitely. And, Laura, the sort of same or the reciprocal is true for science, right? And science can benefit a lot from community engagement. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I think that's a question that, at least within the academy, we're often hearing about how science can benefit communities, but less often talking about the ways in which communities actually improve the science that we're doing and the scientific enterprise in general. So I think, one way is just ensuring that we're asking the right questions and that the questions we're asking are relevant to communities that are experiencing the impacts of climate change on the ground, communities that have a large stake in terms of what the consequences of any policy action that we undertake, the consequences it's going to have for them, for employment, for their health, all of that. So, community engaged scholarship can help ensure the relevance of the work that we're doing and that we're asking the right questions. It also makes our science better. An example from my own work is that we have 3 organizations advising us on this toxic tides project: the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, Cause and PSRLA, Physicians for Social Responsibility Los Angeles. And in this project, we're working with, these pretty messy data sets. The public secondary data sets, they're not perfect. They have a lot of errors in them. We want to be comprehensive and include as many different types of potentially facilities that might release hazardous chemicals during a flood event. But when you're trying to be that broad, it's hard to make sure the data are really accurate. And so time and again, we've showed our preliminary work to advocates, and they've pointed out, things that are missing, things that are concerning. Maybe we need to go back and check, XYZ in the data. So really kind of ground truthing, if you will, what we're doing and making sure that it's as rigorous as possible. And finally, I think engaging with communities and advocates helps your work get out there and make a difference. So Dillon talked about, the need for the narrative and the stats to kind of drive home the take-home messages around climate justice. And I would agree, that certainly the science alone we've seen that that's not enough, right? We've known about climate change. Scientists have known about the greenhouse effect for, over a century, but that's not enough to move towards political action and social action. So, partnering with advocates can help ensure that the findings of the research really get into the public discourse and conversations around policy and how we're going to address climate change, and get into those regulatory spaces, and also inform community organizing work. So I certainly see them as complementary, and have really benefited in my own work from collaborating with communities.